Hi everyone, Landry Ethredge here with Ethredge Counseling Group, joined today by Dr. Etta Gant. We're talking today about a pretty heavy topic that you may not originally think applies to, but I think actually applies to everyone listening and also everyone you know, most likely. And that's the topic of grief. And today we're specifically talking about sort of what can complicate grief, and really how trauma, which depending on sort of the definition you use, trauma can also affect everyone. How trauma and grief intermingle and how they have sort of a relationship with each other. So talk to us, Etta, a little bit about how trauma and grief interact.
Yeah, so they interact very closely.
Hmm.
Um, Grief itself is often traumatic, just loss itself has a traumatic effect. But I wanted a little bit more what we'll be talking about today is kind of diving into like some more significantly traumatic events and how they play out with grief. So, like when our body's having like almost like PTSD responses to trauma and how that makes our grieving process more difficult because the trauma of the grief or of events surrounding the grief are like overwhelming our ability to move forward. So instead, we're either like paralyzed, we're in fight, we're fleeing, we're in all of the fight or flight response actions that are keeping us from connecting with the pure emotion of grief under it all.
Mm-hmm. So really, you're also kind of talking about the nervous system then. So in the fight or flight, that's nervous system sort of being activated while trying to process a loss or to grieve. Um,
Mm-hmm.
So that does sound sort of complicating. It sounds like ideally you'd be moving, kind of letting yourself feel the feelings and moving through maybe the stages of grief, but trauma can kind of keep you stuck, is what I'm hearing.
Right, exactly.
Um, can you give us some examples to kind of make this a little bit more tangible? What might that look like?
Yeah, so this will just be, a few examples. There'll be plenty of things that I won't name, but of course, like a really unexpected and sudden, shocking loss that ignites the shock of that trauma can keep us initially paralyzed because we're not prepared at all,
Mm.
and our brain is like working overtime just trying to process that something so unexpected happened that we cannot get to those feelings yet. Our brain, it's hard for the brain to process loss and death and the fact that you may never see someone again. And when that happens, just so unexpectedly, there's an initial traumatic shock response that can inhibit the processing of grief temporarily or for long, long, long term.
Mm.
Um, Other examples are losing someone to suicide.
Mm.
That's a really tough one. It brings up a lot of complicated and conflicting responses. We get more into that, but that's a really traumatic loss, especially if it was something that you were close to in the same house, or if it was just someone you knew. Um, Being witness to death, especially in some sort of like tragedy or natural disaster, the trauma of your experience or seeing that person um, die or losing them can absolutely shadow or block your ability to actually feel or process that grief because you're either overwhelmed by your own traumatic symptoms, PTSD, flashbacks, nightmares, hypervigilance, that you can't go there because all that's coming up for you is these horrible images. So it has to all just get repressed. Um, and being a caregiver to someone's death can be a really traumatic experience that also complicates the ability to move forward with grieving because um, it could have been really traumatic keeping that person safe and alive and cared for however long it was before they may have died. Being a caregiver can be really exhausting,
Mhm.
playing witness to medical trauma, to health complications, to pain that they may be experiencing, to significant, maybe even disturbing changes in their body and what uh, you might have been witnessing on an hourly basis can be really traumatic. And that might be all that comes up for you now when you think about that person. So, in those ways, trauma is really blocking the ability to grieve. It's really hard.
Yeah, I really see it as sort of grief is sort of the processing of the loss, but the trauma or the PTSD, the symptoms can be so overwhelming or distracting in a way that we're not able to process that loss.
Mhm.
What do you suggest for someone if they're listening and they're like, oh my gosh, I think that's me, or I think that's, so and so who I know. What are your recommendations? I'm sure getting into therapy is probably one of them.
Yeah, that's first and foremost,
First
right?
and foremost, okay, yeah.
I, of course, therapy is great when you're grieving, but when trauma is getting in the way, yeah, professional help is a must. Um, that is something that you can't necessarily feel your way out on your own.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just
Mhm.
because of the way trauma memories are stored or kind of not stored, it's really helpful to have a trained professional to help you navigate that in a way that's safe and doesn't make it worse. Uh,
Mhm.
that certainly.
When trauma comes up, that's when there's blocks and all kinds of things that we can't see, and that's why we need the trained professional in those moments.
Love that. Yeah, yeah. And for anybody feeling hesitant about seeing a therapist, um, with a great therapist, it really is sometimes it feels a little intense to start, but really with good therapy, you're feeling lighter and lighter, as time goes on. So for anyone on the fence about, oh, I don't know, what is therapy? What would that mean about me? Or what if someone finds out that I'm going to therapy? I really encourage you to give it a shot. If you just don't love it, you don't have to keep going, but give it a shot and it can feel really expansive and life-changing, especially when feeling really burdened by something heavy like this. So head over to the website if you're interested in reading Etta's four-part series on grief, different types of grief, how it affects all of us, sometimes on a daily basis for a long period of time. Head over to ethridgecounseling.com and start reading those. And if you're interested, if you're in the Charleston area or in South Carolina in general, you can reach out to us and work with Etta or one of our other trained trauma therapists on staff and start finding some relief and moving through grief. Thank you so much for your time, Etta.
Thank you.